I know you train some of the most successful and influential people in the world. Um, what would you say you see are some of the common themes about some of the things that they do on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, like how they carry themselves from a non-professional standpoint?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I'm very fortunate to kind of have a front row, seat to this show, right? And we're talking about billionaires, athletes, current and former, and or you're full time working single mom that retired from whatever company she exited it from. It's just like really cool people, and the reality is I wish I could tell you like they do the same thing. Like I journal, I cold plunge, I do this. They all complain when they're pushing a sled that's twice their size. They all get tired too. They have a lot of these similar things that I have, you have, but the one common denominator is they all show up and they don't quit, right? So it's one foot in front of the other. And I can talk a little bit more about like certain other attributes, but the main thing is we are very much similar. And what separates them, aside from their ability to be the very best at what they've done in their craft, they just don't give up. They just keep showing up. And that's how you compound all that success over time.
Yeah. Yeah, not giving up, not showing up. And I would imagine just given the way that you know these people, they prioritize um, their health and wellness. Like, what have they like said to you when they come to you and they're talking about making their health a priority? Like, why is it such a priority for them?
Sure, yeah, a lot of things resonate with that, and the more and more I talk to them or get connected, referrals, or they reach out, or I just meet them at a function of some sorts. It's like you see these people, they walk into a room, and a lot of them admire them. They're very successful. They've done beautiful and great things, except there's a big sacrifice of health and mental health along that journey. I often will get them in that vulnerable state of like, hey, I am 15% body fat over what I should be. I should be 15. I'm 30% body fat. Um, I'm struggling to lift up my kid. I can't take a long flight anymore because of this. So I'm getting them in a vulnerable state, and the more and more I see and speak to them, it's like they just sacrifice so much of their physical and mental health to achieve that kind of wealth or success.
What are some of the things you help them with initially as far as like getting that pendulum going the other way to where they're so hyper focused on, business, family, running a company, like networking, all these things that they were doing before where their mental health and physical health like became something that was put on the like the lower end of the priorities list. And I can imagine that it's not like they just went all in on fitness. So what are some of the things that you typically help them get started with initially to help get the ball rolling?
Yeah, sure. Generally you have that conversation, that clear understanding of like, hey, you are not the only one here. Often, we are all captains of our own ships and we are exploring things, moving super fast. And we can often think like, I'm alone in this. This is consuming me. But I remind them that you're not alone, and this is something that you haven't given attention to. It doesn't mean you can't achieve it or have success in it. It's just like anything else. You need to start that ripple effect. And once we have that conversation, then we get into like a movement screen, habits, routines, and then I can begin to program accordingly for that specific person.
Hmm. We're gonna put a pin in this and come back. 'Cause I'd love to know like what you help them do as far as like once they get into a routine, how do you help them organize their schedules to make sure that they stay consistent and fitness remains a priority? But you mentioned that a common theme of these people is that they never give up and they just keep going no matter what life throws at them. And I know that's been a major theme in your own life. And you grew up in humble beginnings. You were raised on welfare, single parent. Your dad overdosed when you were a kid. It's just you and your brother and your mom. Talk about how you grew up. Talk about um, what it was like, to lose your father at a young age, how that impacted you, and then where life took you from there.
Sure. You look back now and you can kind of like start cueing the violins and stuff, but when you're in it and you're a kid, I grew up in South Brooklyn, and it was kind of like the Sandlot, except it wasn't a big park. It was just big concrete buildings and main roads we shouldn't have been playing on. But I had fun. My brother and I had fun. It was just, it took us a little bit of growing up pretty quickly to realize, like, well, my friends have a working oven. My friends have a more stable, functioning home. Um, but as a child growing up, we played, we had fun. Our dad passed around when I was 11. My brother was 12. That was like hardship, and then we got evicted like a bunch after that. But still, like, you're fairly young, and it's life's moving so fast, and it's hard, especially at that age. It's hard to like sit there and dwell. You kind of have to, like, okay, here's where I'm at right now. Here's what's going on with my mom. And, me being in that, kind of passenger seat as a child, 16, 15, or even younger, I kind of intuitively started to realize, like, okay, this is the narrative that I'm in, but it's temporary. Something in my gut and my psyche told me this is temporary, and I'm going to change this narrative of like check to check welfare. Because even with all that, like, I would walk into a room smiling, confident, having fun, because like I'm not a victim, and I'm never going to play that role, just because it didn't feel natural to me.
So when you were that age and like that, all that stuff was going on. I mean, what do you think helped create this mindset of not being a victim and just kind of continuing to move forward in life despite the multiple adversities that you went through?
Yeah, I think my mom was mostly around, and I saw that that was the role she was playing in her own life. And you immediately look at, the people dear to you and try to resemble or emulate like their life. And then that just wasn't what I wanted. I didn't want like sadness. I didn't want that fear of like, well, what's going to happen next? So I think with that, and then obviously, like, my dad passed from drugs, as you mentioned. So all my life, I might have smoked some weed here and there and experimented with some funny looking chocolates, but like, I've never done anything else in my life. And I don't judge those who do. It's just like, there was definitely patterns from seeing my mother, how she lived her life, and what happened with my father, that have sculpted me, to this day. And I just turned 30. So I would say that's probably why.
And then as far as like what kept you out of trouble, because I know that a lot of times what can happen is when people go through stuff like that, they'll end up turning to drugs at a young age. They'll end up surrounding themselves with the wrong types of people. They'll end up in these habits that then create other adversities from the original adversity that they went through, and then that creates even more problems in their life. Other than playing around in the neighborhood with your brother and your friends and having some fun, what else do you think like kept you out of trouble as you began to get into middle school, high school, and so on and so forth?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely, middle school was tough because like our attendance was awful. We had ACI, forget exactly the term, but we had like people from the school in the state come because like our attendance was so low. And I feel terrible for that growing up. It's just that we had no structure or stability, right? Like, my mom, she's a saint. I love her to death, but she lived in this like bubble, and she didn't work either. So it's very hard for us as a child to really take that serious tone, take her tone serious if she wasn't in fact implementing those things that she was saying we needed to do, right? That's something that, me being a father now, like, I can't wait for my son. Bring my son to the gym now. I show him that I get up early too. And even though he's only 2.5, as he gets older, he'll see that. So I think as high school years started to come, I was boxing a lot. And then I started to like really fall in love with that sporting craft. And then I started to watch, your Mayweathers of the world and your Oscar De La Hoyas and your Tysons. And I started, yeah, like I grew up with a lot of interesting individuals in Brooklyn, right? So like that road to fame and money was exciting and intriguing. So I just was like, boxing is going to be that vehicle I take to do that. But so with that, intuitively, I knew, okay, maybe the school books aren't it for me, but street smarts and navigating like a clean, healthy life will get me there. So that was probably it for me.
So it seems like boxing was like the main thing that really kind of helped keep you out of trouble and gave you something to turn a lot of this negative pain into something more positive. What do you think it is specifically about the sport of boxing? Like about like the fundamentals of it, about like the skill set required to do it, the dedication. Like what is it about it specifically that you think was so like transformational for you?
Growing up and my upbringing, and just like all of us, until we reach a certain age, like we're not in control of that narrative to a certain extent. And we are kind of like, here are the cards we've been dealt, and we have to play them out until we can then reshuffle the deck, ourselves. So I think me being in there in that ring with someone else and only someone else was the first time I was able to like slowly control the narrative, Like, okay, if I do really well, that will ripple into something else, hopefully more positive, and I'll just keep that going.
When you were boxing, and obviously boxing is I guess it's more of a, I guess people would say a violent sport, right? Would you ever like think about some of the stuff that like pissed you off, whether it be your dad passing away, into stuff with your
No, I think
mom?
I was
No.
like too terrified of getting punched in the face. So like while I was in there, it was more just like trying to stay present, stay calm, and I was confident in my ability and my dedication to the sport with training. That like I knew that I knew how to channel those emotions and be calm. Because if some of these greats talk about it, like the tough guy in the sport will get hurt,
Yeah.
So you have to kind of play chess in there a little bit.
And you boxed for quite some time. Like what did that like journey look like for you? I mean, I know you actually kind of competed at it. So where did that all
Yeah,
go?
for sure. So I'm probably like 12, 13 years old, and I had buddies in the neighborhood a little bit older than me. They participated in like, drugs and things like that, but they also boxed and they let me kind of hang with them, and I started boxing with them. So it was like your something you might hear your crazy uncle say, like, "Oh yeah, we used to box in the backyard, no mouthpiece, and no headgear." Like it was like that for a while until I went to Gleason's boxing gym in Brooklyn, which is a very historic gym in the East Coast. And I remember I went with this girl I was seeing at the time. I looked like money, spoke like I had it, but I had no money. So like when I went in the gym, they kind of like their eyes lit up a little bit, like, oh, this guy light skinned, can talk smooth, and he looks like he can. They would say he fights like a colored fighter, but looks like like an Oscar De La Hoya, like a Golden Boy. And then they realized very quickly, no, 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 I have no money and I want a box, but I need your help to do so. So I was sponsored, and I've had some like neighborhood help from some of those older guys, and that kept me like out of trouble. Not that I was looking for trouble. And then I did the amateurs for a little while. I fought in the Golden Gloves. I've won some fights. I've lost a few on decision. Was never hurt, thankfully. And I pursued it for quite some time. Like that was going to be my thing. But as I mentioned earlier with my upbringing, you don't get paid in boxing for a long, long time unless like you grow up in that circle or you just like found a ticket and your skills shine so bright that like only it was a matter of time before someone came along. For me, it was like I had my friends in the neighborhood, but no one was going to pay my bills, my mother's bills, so I had to work. And then priorities started to shift. And when your priorities shift too far and you're not dedicated to a sport like boxing, you're going to get hurt. And thankfully, that never happened to me, but I saw it happen to a lot of friends that I see in the sport that are working 9 to 5s, and then putting their kid down to bed and then coming to the gym and then they get knocked out because they're not focused on it. So that's kind of like my history with it.
Yeah. And then how did you then transition from the sport of boxing to wanting to like get in the fitness world?
Yeah, so funny. So I was training with this group after I left Gleason's, the notorious boxing club in Brooklyn. Great guys, but street guys too. So I'll never forget. Like we just came from training, and my buddy had to make us stop in the city, right, to distribute like some goods, if you will. And as we were on the way, we saw this boxing gym, like a boutique boxing gym. And obviously we're intrigued because we both fight. So I stopped. I was like, hey, let's go check it out. And he was like, I got to go. And I was like, hey, I'm going to stick around. I'll meet you back in Brooklyn. And we're in the West Village. And that was it. And then I stopped really hanging out with them as much as I love them. And I was just like, I want to be around this. And they hired me day one. And that was really where the training started. And then it went from me only being a boxing pad coach to evolving away from that.
So when you started to, work in the fitness space as like a boxing like specialist, were you also at the same time like working out like in the gym on your own, or was your primarily mode of fitness boxing?
Yeah, my whole like identity the first few years of me training people was boxing. So like I would do like your pull up, push up, dips, rope climbing, running, but it was mainly boxing. And it was only a few years after I had made that decision. Okay, like I'm finally earning a living from training, that I need to like put all my focus onto this, not 60% here, 40% boxing. So I went 100, put 100 and my focus into the craft of training. Then I started making more money, connecting more with people, learning the hospitality of the game. Because in the West Village in New York, like these people have money, they have busy careers, busy lives. So navigating that, my early EQ lessons from the streets kind of like helped, and my humble beginnings helped with that. Um, and then I started focusing more on longevity, range of motion, strength training, and things like that.
How did you like end up like what was the path like for you from again being that boxing pads coach to working on some of these other areas of fitness to then like meeting and training like some of the most influential people in New York? Like how did that what did that process look like?
I think with more experience, I was able to like be mentored by a guy named like Romeo Goose, who, he's a nurse practitioner now, but also just like, back then, any kind of certification you could have gotten, from rock taping to strength training to battle roping, whatever, he did it all. So I learned a ton from him. And then Dr. Keith Pine, who's like a sports medicine doctor for Kawhi Leonard. He was with the Nationals, and then some great guy. He's a chiro. And I learned a ton about just movement and mechanics and proper range of motion, proper strength at the end of the ranges. And then as my experience started to kick in with them, my confidence came about more. So like then if someone came in to train, I started to realize you're here to listen to me. I don't have to assume that you just want to box. And I started really navigating what was necessary for their needs and their wants. And I also was then able to communicate with them, hey, just because you like boxing doesn't mean it's what you need right now, because your posture's shit, your hips don't work. Boxing, it might make you get a little tired, break a sweat, and you might let off some steam, but it's actually not conducive to your current state, your alignment at this time.
And so like some of these, whether it be celebrities, personalities, athletes, entrepreneurs, hedge fund people that you would connect with and end up training in New York and what you're doing now, were these people that were just into coming to box, or were these people that you just met as a result of training certain people, early on in your career?
In the first, so early on, they were only coming to box because I was at that gym that was boxing based in the West Village. Then I went off, did the independent training thing, probably in 2015, 16, if I can remember. And then some of that influx was still boxing related, but then it became more like, hey, I heard you're great. I'm in the area these days, would love to train with you. And then it was just like, okay, blank canvas. I'll decide how I want to paint this thing, you know? Um, so that's kind of the flow of it.
Right. And then like what helped you, um, what do you think helped you like as far as like your ability to connect with these people and like be successful in that space, given that you said like you grew up in humble beginnings, like there were times I'm sure it seemed like you weren't going to graduate school, you were had all kinds of stuff happen as a kid. Like what do you think really helped you um like build what you built back then?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of like, you know, I used to tell people like, you know, being in New York or like a tier one city, you can meet someone, you know, that can change your life in an elevator, right? But it really takes quite a few qualities of a person for them to want to carry out that conversation after their floor has arrived, you know? And I think the qualities like just being a good human, actually caring about the person in front of you and not just calling them, that's my 9 a.m., you know? Like I always knew the longevity to this game is you have to have genuine care for the person you're working for and working with, and take an interest in the things in their life. You know, remember the little things that they might say. You know, some of these guys, hedge funds, you know, art enthusiasts. I didn't know shit about anything except like boxing. You know, maybe a few things with girls, and like just how to be a good person and have a nice time. But I would learn. I would do diligence on the market. I would do diligence on certain exhibits that are coming. Just because, like, I was tired of like the nodding in these circles while they're warming up and talking, and I didn't have any value to add. So me taking that time, I think honestly, them just seeing that like, okay, this guy delivers a great service. I come here, he shows up on time, he's good to the guests I bring, so the value is added, and I can actually see that he's trying to do something with his life. So I think there's a few elements there that if you put them all together, they add up to like why it was successful and why I was able to get. I probably worked with over 1,000 different humans, not and I'm not group class, like one on one. So like I've connected with a ton of people in New York that till this day there is some branch from this person that there's a connection to.
who's been who's been like one client that comes to mind that has had like a influential impact on you, like as a human, as a man, as a father, as the way you carry yourself?
Um, I think always there's a few, right? There's so many people that were like instrumental to like my success. Um, that are people that maybe no one's heard of and people that have heard of. One comes to mind is this guy Strauss Zelnick. He owns Take Two Interactive, so like Rockstar, Grand Theft Auto, video games, 2K Sports. And he's done some tremendous things from producing the movie Dirty Dancing and stuff like that. I believe that's a fact. I believe. And he's like just someone that early on kind of saw me in those trenches of like building my business, book a business, doing my best, staying fit, meeting great people. And I remember one time he was just like, "What are some of your values and your goals?" And he taught me how to just kind of really define those things and then use that as a way to decipher through decision making. And I'm probably 23, 24, having this conversation with this guy that's worth billions, that's taken his time after a workout to talk to me. Um, and then there's been so many more that have been helpful and thoughtful along the way.
Has there been um anybody that you've seen like just that's been consistent throughout your career, that's like served as like a parental like figure for you, so like a mentor, like that's been somebody you could like lean on, whether it be how to raise like your help raise your son, whether it be like just business decisions? Has there been anybody like that, given the fact that you didn't really have any stability with that growing up?
Yeah, I mean, look, thankfully, um, and you hear people say like someone from 1,000 feet up can be like, oh, he's self-made, he did this, but like I could I could name probably 10 people that I can genuinely call and have a conversation with that have been helpful, pre my pre-surgery and my diagnosis to now, that have been super helpful and thoughtful. And some of them, by the way, Doug, like I haven't even known that long. Like I all my life is for the last, aside from the last 2 years, have been in East Coast, Brooklyn and New York. And there are people that I've spent a decade with, and I don't talk to them that much at all. Not that we don't have love, but like they haven't really been around, and I get that, because they have their lives. But people that I've been here within Austin, only the last 12 to 24 months, and I can call these people like someone I can really count on, and hopefully they can really count on me. So there's definitely been more than one, and I'm fortunate for that.
Let's talk about your diagnosis. So I know you just kind of touched on that. I know this has been something that, as of recent, has been hard for you. At the same time, I know there's been some blessings that have come from it, like some of the ones that you just mentioned, as far as finding out like who some your more true friends are. Um, Talk about like from, I guess, from the genesis of your diagnosis, what was going through your mind. What your mindset was like, what your mental health was like, and then what's the process been like since then?
Yeah. So about 2019, I noticed I had this pronounced lymph node here on the right side. And, I kind of was like, it's a little abnormal. I went to an ENT and they were just like, it's just your lymph node probably overworking. Do you feel sick? And I was like, not really. I feel fine. I might get sick, occasionally, right? Just normal stuff. And by the way, like, I'm super big. I'm really into optimization across the board. So I do blood work quarterly. I test for certain metrics, strength wise, anaerobic, aerobically, and I'm improving across the board, you know, since before that bump. And then February comes. My son's birthday is February 17th. My birthday is February 28th. He's turning 2. I turned 30. And I noticed, so you can see here, right? And then you can kind of see all the way here, right? I noticed a bump up here. And that's when I was like, that's not a lymph node. And then I went to some specialists here, did an ultrasound. Everything was completely different left to right. So from the left side of my thyroid and on, normal, perfect. The right side, all different. And by the way, my blood work showed my thyroid was optimal, even with this. Um, so then I did a biopsy on the bump, on the mass, and then they called me. It's one of those moments you never forget, but it's also a blur, right? Because I'm out and about playing pickleball or something like that with friends. And then, you get scared, especially like my thoughts go to my son, right? And, obviously, like my father unfortunately passed. So it's very important to me to stay active in his life, and fight that fight and be there for him. So then it's very interesting. You get diagnosed, and that is where they just basically kind of stage it, and then there's a process. I had then had my birthday in Miami that following week, where I didn't tell anyone. My friends, my buddy Marty, who's like my best friend, Mario Carbone, I mentioned to you, a good friend of mine, and we're at dinner, and people are doing like the cheers and the toasts, and all of a sudden, all those words mean something even more now. Then I come home March 1st, back to Austin, and then we did all the scans. So from like the 14th to the 1st, I didn't know where this cancer was or how severe. I just knew I had it. What they said, thyroid cancer. So then on the 1st, I got cleared, that there was nothing anywhere else. It was all isolated to this region here on the right side of my thyroid and up, um, which was which was phenomenal news, right? Like I was super calm, I was happy. Then I spoke to my mom. You hear your mother's voice, you cry like a baby, right? So I cried my eyes out, and I just that was my finally like there was a path. Um, and then you start to realize this insurance game we have here is we're fortunate in many ways, and then we're not. Like we have great coverage here locally, but to do something, what I had to do, I had to pull into that network that I'm blessed to have, go and go under their policy with their company and all this other stuff. And then I got approved at Sloan Kettering, which is MD Anderson and Salona, like the best hospitals in the country for this stuff. My ex from a long time ago, her father used to be on the board of the hospital. So all these little moments and chapters in my life started to really come in, and I got approved. I saw the chief of the head and neck surgery. They got me in surgery 3 months later, which could have taken 6 months to a year. And it was full success, about a 9-hour surgery. And they removed my thyroid, about 80 lymph nodes. And yeah, and that was 60 days ago yesterday.
Wow. And so what, man, first, like, just thank gosh you're okay and that you're alive and that everything's better with that.
Still have like the follow up treatment. I got to do this iodine thing, and but everything should be smooth from here on out. Like I just got my labs back. We did it here at Kollective, and all my levels came back very optimal. So that's going to be a thing for the next few years, like some tests, some adjusting on the dose that I have to take every day for this pill for my thyroid, that I don't have anymore.
And so you mentioned these blessings that came from the business that you're in and being a health professional and training some pretty influential people who know people, and then also people that you've stayed connected with or one degree of separation from in your personal life. And then you also mentioned that now it gave you some perspective and almost like fear at the beginning of like, I don't want the same thing to happen to my son that happened to me, where he loses his dad at a young age. Coming out, I guess, somewhat on the other side of all this now, how has your perspective on like life in itself like shifted or has it not?
I was always someone that can stay relatively calm under fire, and use these like I started doing these what I call like triple P's when my son was born. It's like prayer, preparation, perseverance, and I've always been pretty good with that part of me. I've always been pretty good with like all three of those things, right? I'm not a super religious person, but like I have a man of faith, and I believe that like what is going on today isn't necessarily permanent, as long as my actions and my choices are, get better and better and improve over time. And then the ability to prepare, right? So, failure to plan, blah, 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 whatever the quotes are, right? So I think given my current situation, it has allowed me to, to see even more of the importance of those things, and that I'm not. I might look superhuman sometimes if like my training and diet at some point, but anything can happen. I never thought I would be one of those people. And you have moments, or at least I did, when you get from diagnosis to going in for all these appointments. There's like it's natural to have like that why me victim moment, because you're scared and you're just like, why me? But then when you go into the hospital and you start to these kinds of hospitals, and you see the kids and you see the families, that goes out the door right away. And it then becomes like, oh, thank God me. Like, I'm very lucky that it wasn't this, this, and this. So, yeah, I wish I could say it was just like one thing, but it's a combination of stuff.
We talked about like surviving this, which I'm sure was traumatic, right? And then you look at a lot of what occurred in your childhood. Have you like seen any collateral damage occur where your childhood's like impacted your you in like relationships or with friendships or certain things as an adult, or have you kind of just been able to shed a lot of that given what you've been able to achieve and overcome?
Yeah, I've been able to shed a tremendous amount of it, although there are moments that have caught up with me in my like call it Eric 2.0 years, of like not being taught proper um just the proper mechanics of like finances and life and how to manage money properly. I there are times with what I do, I can get someone I can get a few things can go my way and boom, I can get 150 grand one month, right? And then it's like, okay, well, um I need to navigate that and not start buying and helping my family and doing all this stuff. And the next thing you know, it's like, where'd the money go? You know? And the next thing you know after that, it's like, you know, IRS is like, hey, you owe us money too, and it's just like, so there are certain things that I didn't have taught to me because like maybe my parents didn't have it taught to them. And then also us not really going to school that much didn't help. So there are things like that that have lingered from an emotional or a the ability to be like committal. Like I don't have an issue with that. I mean, I'm not on any apps for dating. Like I love women. I have great relationships with the women in my life, more so than men in my life. So mostly have things have shed. But then there's this little pockets of like, I need to improve here. I need to address this sadness with like my mom, my dad, and whatnot. But I think it's fairly normal for us to have these pockets in our memory that can be pretty heavy. Um, and it's just tough to address them when we're moving so fast in every other direction. But I'm really trying to address them and move on.
Why do you think your relationships are better with women than men?
I think I can be, what's the word? I'm like, I used to joke, I'm like a passionate thug, Like I can be very masculine. I can, have a great time with the guys. I can, you know, go to war with boxing with whomever. But then I'm very compassionate. I'm very gentle. I'm very sensitive in a lot of ways as well. Um, so I think that might be a reason why.
I guess coming back to like bringing this all full circle and like now that you're on the other side of a lot of this adversity and that you've worked with all these people that have been very meaningful to you in your life and that have been there for you through thick and thin, and that encompass a lot of your relationships now. A lot of these people in general, I should just say, they're just busy, right? They got families, they got jobs, they got this, they got that, and a lot of people don't have time to go to the gym for 2 hours a day. They just need to be as effective and as efficient as possible. Um, Obviously it's going to be different for people based on their specific goals, but generally speaking, if you just had to pick a few things that you think move the needle most when it comes to people's health and fitness, like you have somebody who's owns a company, has a family, is traveling all over the place and doesn't have time to commit hours a week to the gym, but can do certain things every single day. What are you telling this person to do?
Yeah, that specific person, and that's kind of like this 360 point guard position I play for them. It's like, okay, let me navigate their diet. Let me connect them with like tools, right? Whether it's a chef, whether it's a meal plan. A lot of these guys have concierge doctors. Some of them don't, by the way. Like I've met a tremendous amount of wealthy people, and they are completely like novice to like all of these things. They just kind of function off of caffeine, and the highs of like life and money and all this stuff, and which is cool. But like, so a lot of times it's like I don't feel nervous going up to some of these figures and being like, well, this is what you should be doing potentially, and here's how you can achieve that, and here's how I can be helpful. So I try to just put a solid team around them that when they have that 45 minutes before a flight or after or before a meeting, that it's all done for them, right? whether that's like them coming in to see me when they're in town, or whether that's like having them a program or connecting them with another coach when they land in the city that they're in, getting labs, blood drawn at their house or their, where they are, just to keep things going, and making sure, like in the back of their mind, they're like, okay, I'm paying this retainer, but I know that there is a team, just like I have for my work and my family, that there's a team navigating my health actively. So in that mind, for that in their mind is priceless. Um, so that's how I do it for them. But I would say, going even deeper, like I just really try to navigate, like, you know, grip strength, range of motion, um, zone two, cardiovascular health, get them to move, to be springy, to jump. I try to have them implement these things throughout their days and weeks, right? And there's certain metrics that we try to go off of to achieve, um, weekly, monthly, quarterly, uh, and stuff like that. And then you go even further, like the other side of the spectrum, that like your inner city, like mom, dad, like that I grew up in. Like I wish I could have told my mom back then, like, enough with the 16 packets of sugar in your Dunkin' Donuts coffee, and just like have a black coffee, maybe a little cream, and then start walking more, start stretching more, and you'll be surprised how many people lose weight and live better lives just from cutting out all those substances and moving more. You don't need to be a billionaire. Yeah.
So staying on this person that is, maybe doesn't have $1 billion or doesn't have millions of dollars in the bank, and they can't afford to hire somebody like you or another, professional, but they're just looking to optimize their health and just try to like pull on some of these same strings that you're helping with to orchestrate for some of your high net worth clients. Would you say like the biggest levers they can pull are to like reduce processed foods and processed sugar, like you just mentioned, and then to walk more, or would there be something else that you would add into that?
I think generally, starting, we take someone that's starting kind of fresh. It's like just get them open to the idea of like, go to your local physician, go beneath the skin, see what's what, make sure you're okay, explore that random rash or bump you might have that you've been ignoring because you're afraid what the doctor's going to say. And God willing, everything checks out good. Then from that point, it's just like, okay, yeah, let's take a whole chart of things that you're currently consuming daily, weekly, and let's start to make some adjustments with that. And then from there, social media, there's so much free content. Half of it's probably crap, but the other half, if you pay attention and take on some literature like men's health or all these different things, and you start to navigate, like, okay, what makes more sense, what looks right, what feels right, and then you can go that route. And then there's apps, like, as you know, like I've worked with Ladder for a long time, that are, I think it's like $29 a month, and you're getting like a world class coach. Now it's Ladder's job to get to that household that would never know about Ladder. Um, but there are ways for these people to achieve success in their health and fitness.
I know that like a lot of people's goals tend to be around body composition, dropping body fat percentage, having a certain look. I know you've trained models throughout your career, people that, are in ridiculous shape, and that a lot of times people will see somebody like this online and they're like, I want to look like that person. Um, I want to go two different ways with this. First, like, what is something that you think is misunderstood about these people and that the way that they may look and carry themselves on a like a yearly basis in the context of, are they staying in shape, like this year round, or are they using filters or some of the images photoshopped? And then on the other side of that, what are some of the things that you help them do to keep their body fat percentage low while also like maintaining their sanity and allowing them to at least live their life?
So it's so funny you say that. I just had brunch with a friend, and there was two Victoria's Secret models in there, and both of them, I think, might have had kids a few months ago, and it just goes to show, like, people think like they're not human. Trust me, they're beautiful girls, but they're human from what I just saw. You know what I mean? They're in sweats, they're tired, they're just feeding the kids. Um, so like again, it goes back to like aside from what it might look like, you take a moment and turn the page. There's a lot of similarities, but to your question, they lived the life. They lived the life. I don't really want to dive deep into their metabolism is this because of one, I probably don't know much about all that, but the reality is, I think like there might be some subtle changes through our lifespan where your metabolism slows down, but like for the most part, there is some genetic factor, but it's also like the consistency in moving their body, training daily, getting the right nutrients in, and also I remind them like you do this 2.5 to 3 hours a week. They do this like 9 to 5 every day. This is their job. This is what they do. All their focus is around this. It's like the person that wants to come and box and be a great boxer with me. And like, why am I not getting better? And I'm like, schmuck, you come in 45 minutes a week, you know, 5 minutes warm up, 5-10 minute cool down, little this, little that. We've only boxed 18 minutes. You expect to get better, in one session a week, so get them to realize like this is their person's craft and they dedicate this year round. And even when, as you know, you might see them posting a photo eating a burger or pizza, but if let's just say that they are very mindful, that could be within their macros, right? And they can do that. That's if they're being mindful.
So to the person that has an understanding of what that lifestyle looks like and understands that, again, like you're only seeing a small glimpse of the whole picture, and that this is their job, this is what they do for a living, and that they are human as well, but they're like, you know what, like I want to take some of the tips and tricks that Eric is using to help them maintain leanness and sanity. Like what are a few things that you think to somebody who's listening to this who wants to get leaner, or they are lean and they want to still maintain like their mental health? Like what kind of things should they focus on?
Yeah, I've been saying this like one thing for years, and it starts with honestly like be kinder to yourself, be a little bit more gentle with your process. You get these people that come in super successful, very driven, and then it's almost like they start talking about their physical or mental health, and it's like they hate themselves. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like, do I need to give you like a Tony Robbins seminar? Like, relax, Getting them to be a little bit more gentle with their process is a big key to navigating this. Otherwise, like they'll constantly be hurdles or things that seem obtainable, and then they'll just crash and burn and reset. Um, I think things like the 75 hard medium is a good baseline, but it's also can be intense. For me, again, it just like be kinder to yourself out of the gate. Start paying attention to how much protein you're taking in a day. Try to hit, body weight grams, right? Um, and if you are someone that is really struggling to get, a mile in on the treadmill, then like start doing like just a little bit every day, and just compound that time daily, like little wins. And going back to how we started this conversation, just show up. You don't have to show up to the gym for me and, pay me, but you can just show up for yourself every day in some capacity, commit to a small window and start improving daily.
That's well said. And I'm curious to know. I feel like you've got a good pulse on the industry and the technology and where things are headed. I know you're a partner at the Collective and a coach at the Collective, which I've said since I went there is like the best gym that I've been to. And I've been to Equinox, I've been to Lifetime, I've been to a lot of gyms, big and small, throughout my career and as my on my journey as a health enthusiast myself. And there was nothing like the Collective. And with that said, the industry has changed so much, specifically in the last few years, from from just shifting more to more stuff online and virtual and apps and stuff like that. Where do you see things going over the next like 3 to 5 years in the fitness industry?
Yeah, I think guy the the companies and the teams that do it like at a level that we're kind of flying at right now, if you're not touching on community, culture, um, trends like hospitality, then you're not going to really have so much longevity, because it has to be bigger than them just showing up and getting the workout and leaving. For a lot of people, by the way, like especially my clients, they're coming to get the work done and they're out, right? But then you have people that are very interested in the co-working space, very interested in the community stuff we do here with the members, offsite, insight. Um, so I think adapting on those principles and pillars, and then also making the effort to have the toys for them, the cold plunges, the saunas, like getting them. You want these facilities to be like state of the art. Granted, it's very hard in like tier one cities like New York and LA to have that kind of real estate, but I think at the level we're flying at, like those are some of the things you need to have. And then I think like a little bit steps below that is just the technology with equipment is evolving, right? And I think as people start to get more in tune with their body and their mechanics, they'll start to realize like I'm not getting the best bang for my buck with this company brand pendulum or whatever it might be, or them even learning what the pendulum is, and they're going to want to have more toys. But from our gym, from what I've seen, like you said this yourself, you come in here, people know how to work out, and they work out hard. Some of them, it might be a little, touch and go on what they're doing, but like for the most part, everyone's getting after it. But the short answer is you need to have those pillars going forward. Otherwise, like you're not going to have much success and scaling and just like membership and growth.
What do you think are some essentials that somebody should have at home? Let's just say they don't have, you brought up these tier one cities that might be harder to have something like what the Collective has done. But let's just say there's somebody who's listening now that's like, I'm just super busy and I can commit to doing some stuff at home. Like, what are a few pieces of equipment that you think are necessities?
Yeah, for sure. And I almost feel like maybe I should have prepared this. Is like there's like probably 10 social media accounts that like are always promoting brands that are very accessible. I should probably put a list together and like send that to you to like upload and like get that in front of people. It makes things easier. But I would say exploring a little bit of cold water, right? And maybe it's just 15 seconds at the end, or build up to 30 seconds to a minute, and navigating that. And also, don't be psychotic about it. Like I missed a day, doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Just like try to build good habits with that. I think kettlebells are great because if you have dumbbells, that's perfectly fine. Like if you can try to explore kettlebells, it just teaches you more mechanically of how to distribute the weight. So I think kettlebells would be great. Um, Obviously, like a yoga mat, so you're not banging up your knees and elbows. Um, and then if you have like the space, garage, whatever, like yeah, explore some barbell training, explore you know how to hinge and how to squat, and again, like anything else, like if you really want something bad enough, like you'll find the way to do it, right? If you're someone that is spending a fortune on alcohol every week and then cut a majority of that, all of a sudden you have time for once a week with a personal trainer, um, to really learn and to really progress. So say things like that.
Any trends you see right now going around that are popular on the internet that you think are just a waste of time and overrated?
The one that stands out that's not overrated was the whole knees over toes sled thing. I think that was great. I think it was funny to kind of see people like just strapping themselves up, going nuts for a few weeks there. But it is very beneficial, and it is great. I think it's like, again, it's a tool in the repertoire, right? That you can utilize. Other trends, I don't know, dude. I try to stay away from like I have so many fitness influencer friends on Instagram, and I to be honest, and I tell them like I mute most of them, just because like I don't want to like constantly see all this crap in my face. But I don't particularly, nothing stands out trend wise that I've seen that like people are doing that is like this is ridiculous, which is a good thing, I think.
For sure. Well, Eric, this has been awesome. Thanks so much for coming on here, being vulnerable, sharing your story, sharing all your wisdom, your thoughts. If people want to learn more about you, if they want to check out the Kollective, where's the best place to do that?
So my Instagram, it's Eric Rakofsky one, I believe. You see a photo of me and my little man. And yeah, Kollective. We have 2 locations in Austin, Texas. Kollective with a K, and we're opening in Nashville beginning of next year, which we're really excited about. Yeah, and that's it. And then I just want to say, like, thank you for taking the time. And I understand that we touch up on this, me starting on this whole podcast game as well. It's not easy, and it takes a lot of like, active little gentle nudges to like, okay, let's try to get this. Let's try to move the ball forward. So thank you for your patience and having me on. And I'm excited to learn and listen more about what you're doing. And yeah, and I also, you're going to have guests on here that are like, getting one-liners are great, and this guy has these juicy little nuggets. I can be maybe a little bit of a storyteller, a little too much sometimes. So I wish for the listeners there, I had some juicy little things that you can ping pong off of. But again, hopefully whatever I've shared is helpful to someone. So thank you.
Thanks for the kind words, man. And this was great. I think people are going to enjoy this one. And I'll be sure to include the links to the Kollective and your IG in the show notes. And for those listening, what I invite you to do is to share a takeaway. We covered like so much as far as Eric's journey, his career in the fitness space, what he's learned from his clients, how they've helped him out. We talked a lot about other health and fitness tips and what you can do from that perspective as well. So be sure to share your biggest takeaway, tag Eric and tag myself, because we'd love to hear your feedback. And we once again thank you for listening to this episode of The Adversity Advantage. I'm your host, Doug Bopst. We'll see you next time.